In this video, we're going to compare two GPUs, the ARC B580 and the RTX 4060 while using a Ryzen 7 7800 X3D. We're going to test 15 games in 1920x1080p and 2560x1440p resolution. And it all starts after this short intro. For this benchmark comparison test, we're going to use Intel's ARC B580 reference card and MSI's RTX 4060 Ventus 2X Black OC. And for the test platform, I used a Ryzen 7 7800 X3D with 32 gigs of 6000 MHz RAM. The complete list of the parts used in this test will be down in the description. And if you're interested to see how I built this setup, a link will also be down in the description. The exact graphical settings used will be shown at the start of every clip. Timestamps are available, and the test will be free from any form of commentary, so you guys can interpret the data at your own leisurely pace. If you have any questions or clarifications regarding the test, feel free to comment down below. So yeah, enough talking and let's get on with the test. We're starting off with Black Myth Wukong, which in my opinion should be the game of the year in 2024. And as expected, the RTX 4060 had a slight lead over the B580 on this game. This is simply due to the fact that this game utilizes Lumen, which is basically ray tracing, which we all know runs better on Nvidia cards. But nonetheless, this is quite surprising that the B580 can keep up. Settings used were very high preset with upscaling set to 75, frame gen off, and ray tracing off. Next up, Silent Hill 2, another game which uses Unreal Engine 5 with Lumen. And to no one's surprise, the RTX 4060 also comes ahead the B580 on this game. I also noticed that the 4060 run way smoother compared to the B580 on this game. I did experience some crashes on the B580 when starting up, but expect the B580 to improve in the upcoming months as Intel still continues to optimize their drivers for the B580. Settings used for testing were Epic Preset, no upscaling, no ray tracing, and frame generation off. So next up is God of War Ragnarok. This was tested on Alfheim, which is known to be heavy on graphic resources, and the ARC B580 managed to almost keep up with the RTX 4060, with the B580 averaging 73 FPS versus the 82 FPS of the RTX 4060. Next up, Ghost of Tsushima. Full disclaimer, the copy I use for testing this game is a pirated version because Sony decided to region lock the game here in the Philippines and all other countries which don't have PSN support. And due to having an old version of this game, this caused the textures to completely not load on the ARC B580. I'm guessing because this version of the game has older assets which are not completely compatible with the ARC B580, so take this with a grain of salt. For Cyberpunk 2077, we saw the B580 getting better performance over the 4060. On 1080p, the B580 managed to outscore the 4060 by 7 FPS, and on 1440p, it managed to have even better scaling as it outscored the 4060 by 8 FPS. And as the video goes, you will notice a trend where the B580 shows better scaling in 1440p, and I think this has something to do with its driver overhead issues.
El 80% de los accidentes aéreos provocan la muerte. Respete el límite de velocidad.
On Alan Wake 2, the B580 had better performance over the 4060 on 1440p resolution, while both cards had similar performance on 1080p. I think the B580 also suffers from a driver overhead problem on this game, as it had better scaling on 1440p compared to 1080p. Expect the results to improve on the B580 once better and more optimized drivers come out. Settings used for testing were high quality preset, on native resolution, ray tracing off, and frame generation off.
Let me guess. The FBI. Welcome to Bright Falls. It's nice to have you here. I got you both some coffee. Oh, it's Washington's finest.
On CS2, the 4060 had better performance over the B580 by as much as 20%. I also noticed better 1% lows on the 4060, so if you main CS2 and you are contemplating which one to buy between these two cards, I would suggest going with the RTX 4060. Settings used for testing is very high preset with max FPS set to 0 on the console. Diablo 4 was a toss-up as the B580 had better performance on 1440p while the 4060 was better on 1080p. This is another case of the B580 having driver overhead issues on lower resolution. You can expect this issue to be fixed with upcoming drivers. Settings used for testing were Ultra Preset, no upscaling, ray tracing off, and frame generation off. This was tested on QHD, so expect lower FPS on full dungeon or boss events.
Breathed in fire, purged in ash.
Keep the Knight Penitent bodies outside the city. No, sir.
He survives in the light of holy cleansing fire.
Next up is Final Fantasy XVI. The RTX 4060 outperformed the B580 on this game by a small margin. I also experienced some weird frame drops on the B580 during testing, but the frames got smoother as I repeated the test. So I'm guessing the frame drops has something to do with the textures still loading up. Settings used were high preset, no upscaling, and frame generation off. On Resident Evil 4 Remake, the B580 outperformed the RTX 4060 by as much as 25%. Resident Evil 4 is known to consume upwards of 8 gigs of VRAM on the highest settings even with ray tracing disabled. So this is where the 12 gigs of VRAM the B580 truly shines. Settings used for testing were the highest possible settings with upscaling and ray tracing disabled. On Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, I felt the B580 The B580 only managed to average 73 FPS on the in-game benchmark 2 at which is disappointing as the similarly priced RX 7600 averages upwards
Target
of
area
100
marked.
FPS.
You're cleared hot.
But I can't imagine the B580 as Intel drivers. So for now, Warzone players out there better steer clear of the B580. Settings used for testing were Extreme Preset with upscaling.
Target area marked. You're cleared hot. With you, mate.
Okay, next up we have Escape from Tarkov. And oh boy, don't even try this on the B580. Granted, I was testing Streets, which is the most taxing map to test, but it shouldn't be this bad. Now I did do some runs on Shoreline and Customs, and I was getting about 10 to 15 FPS on 1080p and 5 to 10 FPS on 1440p. Now, this is kinda to be expected as PSG has not optimized the ARC GPUs for this game. So for now, if you main Tarkov, stay away from using the B580. Witcher 3 is also one of those games which I think the B580 suffers from driver overhead issues. The B580 had better scaling on 1440p as it outperforms the RTX 4060 by 10 FPS in contrast to 1080p where the 4060 had better performance. So expect these results to change in the upcoming drivers. On a side note, the stuttering you see on the RTX 4060 footage is actually caused by the recording software and not by the GPU itself. Take a look at the frame time graph on the RTX 4060. There should be a huge spike in the graph which would indicate a stutter, but in this case there are none. The game is running on DirectX 12 API with Ultra preset, no upscaling, no ray tracing, and frame generation off.
Find Novigrad. Does it suit you?
I'd buy tomorrow what you can buy today. Your strength's gone.
On Baldur's Gate 3, the RTX 4060 outperformed the B580 by as much as 12% on 1080p, with the 4060 averaging 120 FPS, while the B580 averaged 108 FPS. On 1440p, the performance gap became close as the 4060 averaged 77 FPS while the B580 averaged 73 FPS. The game ran on Vulkan API and the settings used were Ultra preset running on native resolution. And on Red Dead 2, the B580 outperformed the 4060 by as much as 20%, with the B580 averaging 92 FPS while the RTX 4060 averaged 78 FPS. Now this is the last game I'm going to test, so I'm going to give my final thoughts on the B580. The ARC B580 currently has good value, but it can still be better with better drivers. There are games which run very poorly on this GPU like Tarkov, but I can see these issues getting ironed out once Intel releases better optimized drivers. With an MSRP of $250, you're getting a GPU with 12 gigs of VRAM, which is nice as more and more games utilize upwards of 8 gig. So yeah, even with the driver overhead problems, this GPU is still worth buying, and if you're interested in buying one for yourself, I'll put links in the description on where to buy this GPU. That's it for now, thanks for watching.